All right, a nice win for the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. It's Max Domi, not Ty Domi. Max Domi, that's right. Time warp for me. Max Domi, Ty Domi's son, scored in overtime. And early in overtime as well for the Leafs to secure a 3-2 lead after blowing a 2-0 lead against the Senators and taking a 2-zip lead in the series. And goaltending, man, oh man, makes a difference in the playoffs, doesn't it? It really does. The Leafs got some great goaltending, and they're in good shape right now with the series, up 2-0 for sure. And we shall see, of course, heading to Ottawa. You don't want to get too high on this. You don't want to be overconfident, but man, oh man, it just goes to show you can get outshot, but if you get timely goaltending and timely goals, that's how you win in the playoffs. And the Leafs, lots of excitement in Leafland for sure. And again, other games, of course, in the NHL playoffs happening. The 5 Canadian teams, as a matter of fact, which is pretty good representation, including Washington, where the Habs look to even that series in the first round at 1 game apiece. The Habs lost the first game in overtime. Alex Ovechkin scored the winner. The Edmonton Oilers will be looking to tie their series at 1 when they visit the LA Kings. Colorado Avalanche hosts the Dallas Stars after splitting the first 2 games in Texas. So lots of excitement, lots going on. The Toronto Blue Jays aiming to snap a 4-game losing skid when they wrap up a 3-game series tonight against the Houston Astros in Houston. So, again, this time of year, lots going on in sports. You get the NBA, of course, and the NBA playoffs around the corner, and Major League Baseball, and lots of local stuff as well. So, lots of excitement in sports. I'd like to thank Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. And Blake Priddle, again, yesterday, sat in, did a fine job as well. Thanks to Blake also. We got a lot to talk about today, folks. Normally on Wednesday we have Dr. John Gillis, but Dr. Gillis is away this week, and sitting in will be the one and only Steve Murphy. That's right, folks. Steve Murphy will join us right here in studio from 11 until 12, and we'll have a good chat, and we'll take some calls as well. So Steve Murphy will join me here in studio, and look forward to chatting with him. And again, we will take your calls, and then we'll take your calls afterwards as well from noon until 1. So lots of opportunity for you to have your say today. And I'm sure that some of you will still want to be talking about the federal election. The clock is ticking before Canadians head to the polls to cast their ballot in the April 28th election. Attacks from the federal party leaders are heating up. Both the Liberals and Conservatives are critiquing each other's platforms, with Liberal leader Mark Carney saying the Tory platform relies on phantom math, while Pierre Poilievre is charging the Liberal platform was authored by the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So, again, we'll get your take on what's going on politically. And, of course, the passing of the Pope. Some of you may want to talk about that or not. We shall see. And anything else you want to get into, again, Steve Murphy will join us between 11 and 12 and then noon till 1. Take your calls. So lots of opportunity to have your say today. All right, joining us now for a chat is Sean Fraser, Liberal Member of Parliament in the riding of Central Nova. And Sean Fraser, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so I guess first off, let's address the about face. Why you decided that you wanted to run after announcing that you weren't going to run for family reasons. What changed?
Sure. Look, since I made the announcement I was going to be stepping away in December, a lot of people had been asking me, encouraging me to run again, given the fact the world had changed so much with the threat of Trump, change in leadership locally. But those aren't the reasons why I left. Being the member of Parliament for my hometown has been the job of a lifetime, and I wanted to be able to do it. But with a couple of young kids, 9 years old and 3 years old, it became really tough to manage the lifestyle and still be both a good dad and a good MP. I got a call from Mark Carney the day before my announcement, and he said, yes, we do want you to come back. But I know why you left, and what does making it work for your family look like? So we spent 30, 40 minutes on the phone talking about the fact that I might not be able to travel all around the world again. Mm-hmm. And if it means every weekend and every day the house isn't sitting, I'm going to be sent to a fundraiser in Kelowna or Toronto or up north, that wasn't going to be workable for me and my family. But he said, look, you've got my phone number, I've got yours. Let's make sure we have open lines of communication to make sure that you can be there for your kids, but you can also be there for your community. So I jumped back in with both feet. I'm excited about it. The response has been very positive on the ground, and I'm looking forward to doing everything I can to hold this riding and to help the new government under Mark Carney maintain their presence on the government side of the House.
Okay, so the claim or the accusation that the political winds have changed and under Mark Carney and the polls and the opportunity presented itself to potentially form government, that wasn't a factor at all?
Well, I actually wanted to run. I think I said it in my remarks at the time of my announcement that I wanted to run and to win in the election, but it was really the years on the back end of it that were more of a challenge. But anybody who thinks there's political expediency to running as a Liberal in Pictou County or the Musquodoboit Valley simply doesn't know the electoral history of this riding. Once in my lifetime, actually once in many lifetimes, has this seat gone to the Liberals, and it was only when there was a wave in 1993 where we won every seat that it's happened before. To go back before that election, the last guy to hold it as a Liberal in my hometown was born, I think, in 1870, when Brian Mulrooney, who became a friend of mine before he passed away, needed a safe seat in Canada to run in when he became leader of the Conservatives in the 80s. It was Central Nova. Peter MacKay's father, Elmer, stepped aside to clear a path for him. There is no simple path to getting elected as a Liberal in this particular riding, but we don't want to take anything for granted. We know we're going to have to work our tails off. This is not going to be a cakewalk, and it shouldn't be. You should have to fight for every vote. You should put your plan on the table for your community and allow people to make their judgment, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the results may be Monday.
All right, so if elected, you mentioned time being a factor and wanting to spend more time at home. Would that mean that you would potentially turn down a cabinet post if offered?
Look, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to run to win my seat first and help the government under Mark Carney maintain its position as government. If I was asked to take on additional responsibilities, I would not be able to accept the job as Minister of Foreign Affairs, for example, where you need to have a physical presence on the other side of the world to do the job effectively. If there are other roles the Prime Minister may have in mind, I would entertain those conversations. But I've made a commitment to my family and to myself to be a present father as well as being a dedicated member of Parliament. So it may impact what roles would be available to me. But I think it's bad karma to be thinking past Monday. I got a job to do to go earn votes in my community, and I can't be thinking about what position I'm going to have. I got to be thinking about what jobs my constituents are going to have.
Okay, one of the claims against the Liberals, and you've heard all this countless times, is that it would be more or less the same government, different leader. What's your response to that?
We'll look at the focus and how it's shifted, both given the changing landscape with the threats from the United States, but also the person who's in the leadership position. Mark Carney is his own person. He's got his own background with a unique focus on the economy and job creation, and he knows more about managing international economic crises than just about anybody in the world. This is somebody whose experience, his education, his background, and his history of managing crisis on behalf of the Canadian economy as well as the British economy position him perfectly to deal with the kind of threat that we're facing now. Anybody who suggests that he's just another version of the same person who was in before hasn't spent time getting to know him or to listen to him. This is somebody who has got a razor-sharp focus on the economy and is looking to do what he can to help protect our communities and good jobs across the country when it comes to an existential economic threat faced by Donald Trump. So some people will make that kind of an accusation, but to me it's a fairly lazy exercise to do the easy thing rather than to dig in and actually get to see what he's talking about and what he's proposing.
Okay, how much of a role did he play as economic advisor? Because we hear varying reports, and how much influence did Mark Carney have over the previous government and Justin Trudeau when it came to economic policy?
So Mark was only formally engaged over the last few months, is my understanding, of the time before the former Prime Minister stepped down. But he's somebody who's been offering advice publicly to economies in Canada and around the world for more or less his whole career, including going back to Harper's time in government when he was the governor of the Bank of Canada. It was the last few months he was engaging in a bit of an exercise to develop ideas for the platform. But he wasn't particularly involved, in my experience, over the lifetime of the previous government during my time as elected official. I did have the opportunity to get to know him a bit over the last year that I was serving as a member of Parliament. I had an opportunity to discuss my own ambition for what we might be able to do over and above what the previous administration had done on housing policy in particular. And he's taken some of those ideas in good faith and instilled them into the platform that we're campaigning on directly, including the creation of a public developer who's going to have the federal government be building homes on federal lands, much like we were after the Second World War when so many veterans came home. So from my experience, he was engaged to help identify what we may do next. But I hadn't actually seen him engage much in a formal role prior to my announcement in December that I would be leaving politics.
Okay, so I read a story this morning. I don't have it in front of me. I wish I did, but I've read many stories that suggest that Carney was during the 2020 crisis of COVID that Carney was brought on board to varying degrees as an advisor. You're saying that that's not true, or that's the case, or that's not the case?
Yeah, I'm only saying that I hadn't personally engaged at that point in time with him. And look, I was involved with some of the economic response to COVID. I was the finance minister's parliamentary secretary, and my job was to go crowdsource solutions from anyone who was willing to give them. I don't doubt if there are reports that he was called on to offer perspective, that he would have offered that perspective. The extent to which his advice was heeded is something you'll have to ask him. The only engagement that I have personal knowledge of is more near the last number of months of the previous administration, when he'd been taken on to provide advice to the Liberal Party as to what ideas they should be looking at on a go-forward basis. I don't doubt, giving his role as an esteemed Canadian with enormous experience on issues around managing economic challenges, that he would have received a phone call or two over the years. But my understanding is that the formal capacity in which he came on as an advisor was really for the Liberal Party in advance of this election. Of course, before anyone knew it would be him in the position as leader.
Okay, you held a couple of big portfolios, as we already talked about, immigration and housing, and those are two issues that are massive right now. And immigration, I think that you've admitted that immigration got a bit out of control when it came to numbers. Well, tell us what you might have done differently in hindsight on immigration.
Sure, and it's important to understand where these challenges came from. At the time that I was in the portfolio, it was just as the borders were opening up at the end of the pandemic. And one of the challenges that we faced was that we had a few years' worth of applications in the system of people who'd already been approved with employers who had a massive labor shortage saying, we're going to close after the government has spent so much to help keep us open during the pandemic so we'd still be here. If we don't have the workers, we won't be able to serve the customers who've now come back. So we did see a large number of people who had applied during the pandemic but were not allowed to travel all arrive at once. In addition, we had some challenges with the international student program that our projections were a little bit off on. We saw post-secondary institutions across the country, more in, frankly, Ontario and British Columbia than we've seen in Nova Scotia, really increase the number of study permits that we were requesting. And if there's one thing that I would have done differently, it would have actually been going to provincial government sooner to say, you are in charge of which colleges and universities can actually access this program. We have to process these study permits, but you can't keep doing it this way. There was real exploitation of the system going on that we should have responded to more quickly. There was one institution in particular in Ontario that requested 35,000 study permits without any plan to actually provide housing or adequate health care to the people who were going to be arriving in a fairly small community, given the number of study permits that were being requested. What we should have done a year sooner than we in fact did was actually place that cap on the provinces and then said, you can allocate these spaces. There are some things that brought people in, like the mission to welcome Ukrainians who were fleeing the war, that remain the right decision, that did, in fact, put some pressure on our communities. But on that one, I would do it again. So you have to respond to the shifting landscape. As the labor shortage began to quiet down, and as we saw increasing pressures on housing and healthcare, we changed the approach, and we reduced the overall number of people who would be coming in to allow time for our communities to catch up. What we need to do going forward is work directly with communities to make sure that we continue to welcome the doctors and nurses who are going to provide health care, the entrepreneurs who are going to create jobs for Canadians, but at the same time, accelerate the pace of home building and the hiring of healthcare professionals to keep pace with the number of people who are moving into our communities.
So, Sean, what's the main thing that you continue to hear at the doors when it comes to concerns from constituents?
Look, this is my fourth election, and never before have I seen such consensus about what really matters in this election. And it's standing up for Canada in the face of economic threats from President Trump. I live 10 minutes away from a Michelin plant, and 70% of the tires that they make are sold into the American market. There are hundreds of families, thousands across Nova Scotia, with one employer who could be impacted by these tariffs that could impact the product going across the border. It's not just one employer. It's every machine shop who makes the equipment for businesses all over the world, including in the United States. It's the small businesses whose customers are employed by those businesses that do cross-border trade. This is certainly a sovereignty issue, but it's also a kitchen table issue. Making sure families have the economic means to put food on the table for their kids is what's really creating this anxiety with a lot of people in the community that I represent. We want to make sure that we actually have someone who has the experience in managing economic crises to stand up to President Trump and to say, if you're going to be an unreliable partner, we're going to look for new partners. We're going to be engaging with economies around the world to increase trade, to help Canadian businesses sell to new customers. At the same time, we make sure we protect workers and businesses that may be impacted by President Trump's behavior when it comes to these unjust tariffs.
Sean, listen, best of luck on Monday, and let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Got a lot of doors to knock.
All right, take care. Sean Fraser, Liberal MP, Central Nova, and looking to be reelected in that riding. When we come back, a campaign called End the Housing Game. We'll talk about the End the Housing Game. We'll get to this when we come back. All right, Michelle Lindsay is representing the People's Party of Canada candidate in the riding of Dartmouth-Cole Harbour, and joins me here in studio. Michelle, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so this is your third time running.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I started in 2019.
Yeah.
And with the new party, and of course, it wasn't so popular. We had radical ideas, which seem to be the ideas that are required now to improve our economy. Then I ran in 2021. I received 10.4% of the vote. And I've decided to put my name in the hat again because we have the best policies and we need to hold the larger parties accountable.
Okay, you say radical ideas. Expand on that.
Yes,
what do you mean
radical
by that?
ideas. Well, let's see. Interprovincial trade barrier policy.
Yeah.
We were talking about removing the interprovincial trade barriers and allowing tradespeople and construction companies to actually work across Canada rather than be prohibited just in their provinces. And the other thing, too, is, opening up the provinces to doctors. I have my brother-in-law is a physician in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes he thinks about wanting to come to Nova Scotia, but, there's the loopholes to go through and the recertification and the amount that costs, and also putting a pause on his practice in order to study and then do those exams.
Yeah. So radical ideas, you were being a little sarcastic with that.
I was being facetious.
Facetious, that's the term. Okay, so what else do you think that separates you from your party from the other parties?
I think, it's sensical ideas. I mean, I know Poilievre stole our common sense ideas, but these were ideas that were actually researched and developed through the Montreal Economic Institute. Max was vice president of the Montreal Economic Institute, and that's a think tank for Quebec policy and Canadian policy. And so they looked at these: agriculture, healthcare, national defense, and the economy. And they found that these would be the policies that would help alleviate some of the pressures on Canadians and actually unlock our economy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about some people fear that you're splitting kind of the vote, that center-right vote, and therefore allowing perhaps the Liberals to gain more seats than otherwise they would have?
I think that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
Actually, that's something that was created in social media, because when I go to door to door, people aren't concerned about that. They actually are concerned about a strong voice for them in the House of Commons. And so when I present myself, some of them will say, well, is it a waste of vote because you're not going to form government? I say, absolutely not. You need someone in this riding who's going to speak on your behalf against what's happened in the last 10 years.
And what response do you get?
Oh, they love me.
Yeah?
Yeah, they do. They actually do. And it's unfortunate that many of the homes that I go to have already voted because they haven't met me. But when they meet me, they can see that I have a force. I'm a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. I'm a mother of 3 children. Yeah. And people know what mothers of 3 children can accomplish.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think the biggest mistakes the Liberal government's made?
Wow, there's a lot. Okay, we don't have the time to talk about that, but I know the affordability issue was a big issue for people, and a lot of things happened in terms of the irresponsible immigration numbers. And I hear them making excuses that the universities, brought too many people in. However, the government has a responsibility, an oversight on immigration. Mm-hmm. And we used to do it really well. We actually did. We vetted people. We made, had the interview about values and beliefs. And we also were doing the vetting in other countries. People weren't just coming here and saying, you can't get rid of me now. They were actually being vetted in embassies and that, Canadian embassies. Mm-hmm. And people were actually coming here because they thought that they could provide a benefit to Canada. They were highly skilled, or they were an entrepreneur and they had an idea. But now, we're not vetting, and we're bringing in unskilled workers that are competing with our students for certain jobs. And I think we have a responsibility as Canadians to make sure that, our younger people who are our future leaders have jobs in a sector where it's giving them experience so that it improves their lives and their careers in the future.
Okay, what's the PBC going to do about affordability?
Affordability, we are looking at having a pause on immigration so that we don't have such competition. There's a supply and demand issue right now with homes and units and living space. I mean, we can see it even with, our tent cities here. We didn't have that before. And we really have to look at being responsible in the care for our citizens. And, the federal government is responsible for 3 things. They are responsible for national security, for the economy, and for the well-being of its citizens. Mm-hmm. So I think they've done a terrible job at doing that. And so, the Liberals need to be held accountable. And I think the Conservatives need to be held accountable as well for their silence. I mean, I have a candidate in my riding who doesn't even want to attend the debates, the Conservative candidate.
Okay, so which would you prefer? Obviously, you would prefer a PPC government, but which would be, short of that, a Liberal government under Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre government?
Well, I was looking into Mark Carney's background, and every policy he talks about implementing, he seems to have some vested personal interest in these businesses. Like Brookfield has a vested interest in Westinghouse and nuclear energy and modular homes and other areas where he said, we can build the homes and they could be modular. So, I think I would prefer, a more conservative approach, and I think to give the Conservatives a chance. But it's really unseated right now. It's really difficult to determine who's going to win, because I did hear a political analyst recently say when the Conservatives have over 38% polling, they're more likely to win.
Okay, if people want to know more about you, Michelle, do you have a presence online? Can people check you out online? How to direct people to find out where they can reach you online?
So I'm on X at Vote Michelle Lindsay. Vote Michelle Lindsay, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And I can't remember all my handles. I'm sorry, guys. Facebook, Michelle Lindsay PPC, and on Instagram, where I have about 27,000 followers, Canadian_source.
Okay, so and they can Google Michelle Lindsay as well.
Yes, votemichellelindsay.ca is my website.
Okay, Michelle, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. That's Michelle Lindsay, the PPC candidate for Dartmouth-Cole Harbour. A campaign called End the Housing Game, urging all candidates and federal party leaders to make housing a top priority in the federal election. That when we come back. The Housing Canada Coalition, made up of 4 leading Canadian organizations from across the housing sector, launched a new advocacy campaign aiming to ensure housing and homelessness are front and center in this federal election. The End the Housing Game campaign highlights how the rising cost of living, unaffordable mortgages and rents, and lack of housing supply have created a housing system that plays out like an unfair game stacked against Canadians. Joining us to talk about all of this is Janice Myers, CEO of the Canadian Real Estate Association, one of the Housing Coalition members. Janice, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Of course. Good morning, Todd.
All right. So when we use the word crisis, sometimes it gets overused, but in this case, I would say that it is exactly that, a housing crisis. And the numbers back that up, right?
For sure. So Canada's housing system is in crisis, and too many Canadians are falling through the cracks. And of course, the trade war with the United States is causing economic turmoil, with the potential to push more people out of jobs, homes, and towards homelessness. And so this federal election, it's never been more important to come together to address these critical issues. Abacus Data did some research for the coalition in December 2024, before the trade war began. A striking 57% of Canadians fear losing their home, whether owned or rented, if their financial situation were to change. Of course, that reflects the fragile state of our housing security across the country, and in fact, it's higher among younger people. Upwards of 63% fear losing their home or the place that they rent right now. So 9 in 10 Canadians are concerned about the current state of housing in Canada.
How did we get to this state? What happened? I think it's important that we analyze what went wrong. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've experienced this demographic, shift of people entering their home buying years, and the largest cohort entering their home by a year. They're actually larger than the baby boomers, and we hadn't been building enough supply, or the right type of supply, along the way. We stopped building, sort of the row houses, the semi-detached, the townhouses, those types of things, when we probably needed it the most. And so now we have this crunch of not having the right type of supply. We don't have enough supply. And then we have, this large cohort who the dream of home ownership is really important to Canadians, and they're looking to buy a home. And so, of course, it's economics. When you have no supply and increased demand, that increases prices. And so we just got way behind. We at the Canadian Real Estate Association had been talking to government for many years about supply, and they just saw the housing market moving along, and they were like, well, we don't see the problem. And now they do. And we are definitely in a crisis. So the coalition formed because we represent different parts of the housing system, and there's only one housing system, and we really must collaborate to ensure that it works for everyone. The campaign that we've launched, called End the Housing Game, we want to ensure that housing and homelessness are front and center in this federal election. It's really going to take a cohesive and collective effort, not only by the federal government, but provincial governments and municipal governments to work together to end this long term and build resilience into the housing market.
What are your thoughts on Mark Carney's plan to build a large-scale kind of housing wartime effort? What are your thoughts on that idea?
Well, we've definitely been advocating for accelerating the innovation to build homes faster and less expensive, and that includes modular homes, off-site construction of entire homes or elements of the home, such as prefabrication or panelization. So that definitely fits along with what we would like to see. We'd also like to see developing a housing skills agenda for Canada that equips a workforce, including reskilling of any displaced manufacturing workers, and an immigration workforce strategy, which is an initiative realtors have long been advocating for, and it's backed by the Conference Board of Canada research paper that we put out based from the industry as well. So there's a number of things that we have to do to certainly increase supply, and there's been a lot of focus on that by the various parties. But we also have to create an immediate housing safety net to protect Canadians from the impacts of the economic shocks that are coming. And we really don't want to see more people fall into homelessness. I mean, in your fair city, I'm sure that you have seen the increase in homelessness, and economic precarity really will continue to put more people at risk.
Okay, what about what the Conservatives are talking about when it comes to building houses and eliminating GST on the federal portion of the GST? Those ideas good or what?
Well, certainly we've seen the increase in purpose-built rentals as a result of removing the GST for that specific purpose. So tax measures are definitely another tool in the toolbox that is really going to be important.
Okay. Again, what perhaps would you like to hear that some of the leaders have not been floating for ideas?
I guess we're really pleased to see that everybody is talking about housing, because it is the third most important thing after cost of living and the trade war with U.S. that Canadians have said they really want action on. I guess, as I mentioned, it's really good to focus on supply and measures that will help people get into homes. But we really first need to protect Canadians from the immediate threats and precarious situations by providing stability for those that are hardest hit and preventing a wave of new homelessness. So that means things like, support for rent banks to help renters keep their housing, or implementing a mortgage deferral program, like the one that was introduced in the beginning of COVID-19. So those types of things are going to be really important, as well as driving economic growth by investing in housing, particularly community housing. So those are things that we think need to be considered, that the government needs to focus on the entire system and take action on each area that makes up the system.
How about skilled trades, having the people with the knowledge to build the homes and the contractors? This is a challenge, is it not?
Absolutely, and that's why we really do believe that we need a housing workforce plan, and we need to bring in skilled trades. Everybody knows we need immigrants and immigration, but we need to ensure that they are trained and helping us build homes if possible.
Okay, so when it comes to affordability and that price point of affordability, how much of a challenge will it be to create a price point which the average wage earner can afford at this point?
Yeah, it's very challenging, and it's not just the building units; it's building the right type of units that families can grow and raise their families in. So, the right kind of housing is important, and of course, it's simply going to be supply. We need more supply before prices will begin to drop to a place that is within reach for many young people.
Straight up public housing. What are your thoughts on public housing?
Certainly, we believe that that's another part of the housing system that needs to be supported, and so investment in public housing, investment in ensuring that we have community housing within communities that's right for those communities is very, very important. And it's the government had built housing in the past. It's not just about building the housing; it's about maintaining it and ensuring that it continues to evolve. And that's where an investment probably needs to be made as well. So there's lots of challenges and lots of things to do. And we're really encouraging Canadians to go to endthehousingame.ca, find out what our various policy solutions to talk to sort of address the entire housing system are all about, and then to talk to their candidates about it. And even, when the election happens and the next government forms, we really want Canadians to talk to all levels of government to make sure that housing remains a top priority.
Okay, so are you confident that, in fact, the candidates are heeding your admonishment here?
We've seen many of our policy suggestions being addressed in one form or another by each of the platforms, and so that is really, really encouraging. And at some point, it is my great hope that all of these things come together and we create this momentum, so that all Canadians are going to be able to find, housing that meets their needs.
Okay, Janice, again, if people want to know more about this, direct them to the website again?
Yes, and thehousingame.ca.
Okay, Janice, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. Janice Myers, CEO of the Canadian Real Estate Association, one of the Housing Coalition members. When we come back, a chat with a Liberal candidate in the riding of Sackville-Bedford-Preston. We'll be back. All right, in case you missed it, we're in the midst of a federal election. As a matter of fact, it's fast approaching April 28th, and it is arriving quickly. Joining me here in studio is Braedon Clark, Liberal candidate for Sackville-Bedford-Preston. Braedon, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for having me today.
All right, and you're not new to politics.
No, I'm not. So I was an MLA. I was on the show here with you a few times in the past. I was the MLA for Bedford South from 2021 until this past November. And now we're back in the ring again because, I have always believed in politics and public service, and I think this is an incredibly important election, and so I decided to throw my hat in the ring on this federal one as well.
Do you feel that having provincial experience lends itself to the federal scene? I suppose it would, eh?
Extremely. So in a couple ways. One is relationships. So all of the MLAs in the federal riding, I know because I worked with them for a few years. Same thing with the city councilors. And when you go door to door, anybody goes door to door, people, the average voter doesn't care about those distinctions between levels of government. So I go to a door and I'm just as likely to hear about traffic as I am about immigration or the military or President Trump. So that's super helpful for me. And I think that's something that if I were to be elected would be a great asset for me.
Okay. What do you think that obviously the polls are looking good right now, but how much confidence do you have in the polls?
I think they're accurate. Yeah, generally speaking, there's always variations here and there, and they're as scientific as they can be. Yeah. But on the other hand, you never, as a candidate, you don't take faith in them in the sense that you keep working no matter what. So, we're out 12 hours a day for the last 30 days, knocking on doors. We've done thousands and thousands of doors, thousands of phone calls. And we just keep working, keep identifying people and making sure they get out and vote, which they are, which is a really good sign.
What are some of the big key issues that you continue to hear of concerns from people?
So I would say there's two kind of main areas. One is obviously everything to do with Trump and tariffs. Yeah. That's a huge issue. I was at a company in Burnside yesterday. Part of my riding is actually Burnside as well. Joe Johnson Equipment, they do maintenance and trucks like the Halifax water trucks, for example. They supply a lot of those, and they're dealing with the tariffs because they build these trucks in the U.S. and so they're managing through it, but they don't know how long that can continue before there's real impacts. Mm-hmm. So that's a big issue for businesses, for individuals, obviously, and then everything around affordability, as we've known for the last number of years. So whether that's housing, food, any of those issues, that's still right at the top of mind for people.
Okay, but some would say that was the Liberals doing, right? That the previous government had its hand in immigration targets, which were out of control, which admittedly were out of control. Housing, affordability, these are inflation issues that happened under the Liberal watch. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I don't think that's completely wrong. No, and I think one thing that politicians and political parties should be doing more of is being honest with people about when they make mistakes. Because politicians and political parties are like any other person or organization. Sometimes things don't go the way they want, and I think it's mature and reasonable to say, hey, we made a mistake here. Let's cut down on these immigration levels, for example, which the government has done and will continue to do, which I think is smart. And also, how do we build more homes, right? And I think of the three plans that I've seen from the three major parties, I think our plan is the best in terms of getting homes built, not just from the private sector, which of course is going to be a big part of it, but also where can the government be involved to build the type of accessible, affordable housing that so many people in Halifax and Sackville-Bedford-Preston and across the country need.
Is that all costed? Is that properly costed, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm not an accountant. I wouldn't pretend to be a master of accounting, but everything I've seen seems to suggest that the Liberal platform is costed appropriately, and I think it also restores us back to operational balance in 3 years, 4 years. So I've heard some people say, opponents of the Liberals, let's say, saying, oh, this budget, this platform is similar to Trudeau's. It's not. So
how is it different?
So if you look at 2021, the last federal election, the Liberal platform was about 2/3 operational spending, 1/3 capital. This election, it's the exact opposite. So it's 1/3 operational, 2/3 capital. So when we talk about capital, just to make sense of that for everybody, that's building things, right? That's building high-speed rail. Yeah, that's building physical things in the world, right? Not just having more people working in government or more services. So I think that's what Mr. Carney wants to talk about. That's what I want to talk about, is how do we build things in this country, whether it's homes, whether it's new infrastructure, ports, energy corridors, so that people can have faith that government can actually do big things and do it well.
What about the size of the public sector? We know that it grew exponentially under the Trudeau government, and yes, immigration went up and population went up, but it went up disproportionately, the size of the public sector. Do you feel that should be righted or looked at all?
Yeah, I think that's always a reasonable thing to look at. I'm a candidate. I'm a person who tries not to take super ideological views. So government is not always bad. Government is not always good. Yeah. I've worked in multiple provincial departments in my career, and I have a ton of respect for public servants. But it's also something where if we're not getting the return on investment for that, then we should look at that too. I think that's fine.
Okay. What about dealing with Trump? What type of approach do you think Mark Carney should be and would take?
I think the approach he's been taking, which is kind of strength, firmness, and asking for respect, and I think getting it. We've seen a 3-month pause on a lot of the tariffs, not all the tariffs, but a lot of them, which I think is obviously positive news. And the other thing, the only silver lining of this whole Trump scenario to me is it's exposed where we can do better as a country. So whether that's knocking down interprovincial trade barriers, which is something that we really want to focus on, and the premiers seem on side, which is great. Or diversifying our trade, right? So we can't depend solely on the U.S. We need to look to markets in Europe and Asia in particular to move our products. And hopefully, at some point in time, I can expect that things will revert to normalcy in the U.S., we think. Don't know when that will be. But when they do, we can't just sit back on our laurels and say, okay, Big Brother is going to take care of us again, because that's a risky game to play, as we've seen.
All right, natural resource extraction, the oil sands, pipelines. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things. Again, this is not a black or white issue, and I think it's been made that way in the public discourse too much. So, right now we're importing a lot of oil from other parts of the world into St. John, for example. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that are interested in seeing energy move across our country, east-west, rather than north-south. I'm hearing that at the doors in Sackville-Bedford-Preston, which is, a suburban riding. It's not a place where you would naturally expect to hear that. Yeah. And I think that's good. Again, that's something that we need to be doing as a country to make sure that our resources, which we have, can get to a market. And also, the other piece of it is making sure that the industry is competitive and changes practices to make sure that it's greening over time. Because we know, oil and gas production is not going to end tomorrow. But on the other hand, we need to make sure we have a plan for the climate, and I think we have a very credible one on that.
Okay, Pierre Poilievre says that he would axe the carbon tax completely, not only on the consumer-facing carbon tax, which we know was extremely unpopular, and your party has dropped, but also on big emitters. What's your take on the carbon tax and big emitters?
Yeah, I think it's worth keeping. This is a tax that's been in place in Alberta, for example, for close to 20 years. 2007, I believe it was implemented by a provincial government in Alberta, which at that time was a conservative government. And the idea of a tax, generally speaking, in a lot of cases, is to change behavior, right? We have very high taxes on cigarettes, for example. Yeah. And the reason why is because generally we don't want people to smoke because it's not good for your health. Yeah. So that's the idea of an industrial carbon tax, is to incentivize industry to change behavior, change processes, and they want to do that in many cases. I mean, they're businesses, right? They want to do whatever's best for their business, and they see that in the long-term trend. So it's a policy that I'm quite comfortable with, and I think it balances the needs of the existing industry and where we want it to go over the next decade or so.
Does it ultimately cost consumers more money, though, for products?
Honestly, it's hard to say. I mean, it's something that's been in place for a number of years, so it's already baked in. It's not, when the carbon tax was first introduced here in Nova Scotia a few years ago, we saw an overnight jump right at the pumps. Yeah. That's not the case on this because this is an existing policy.
Yeah.
So
sure. Okay, if people want to know more about Braedon Clark, where can they do so online?
I'm all over the place these days, as you can imagine. So Facebook, Braedon Clark. Instagram is Braedon Clark NS, I believe. Hard to remember all these handles these days. Yeah. And I'm on X. I almost said Twitter. I'm on X as well. And, of course, we've got radio ads running. We got billboards, signs all over the place. Yeah. I'm sick of seeing my own face, but that's part of campaigning, I guess. But,
okay, Braedon, best of luck on Monday.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate your time as always.
All right, take care. That's Braedon Clark, a Liberal candidate for Sackville-Bedford-Preston. Steve Murphy when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, joining me here in studio, the one and only Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, friend of the show. Steve, nice seeing you, my friend.
I've substituted for a lot of people, but never a doctor.
I know, Dr. Gillis is away.
Does that say something about the state of healthcare in the province that I am sitting in for Dr. John Gillis? Oh, boy. Big boots to fill.
There you go. So are you willing to take medical calls?
You wouldn't want to ask me any medical questions.
There you go. No. So it's quite a world we're
I
living in.
I can't even open a pill bottle.
Oh, there you go. So it's quite a world. I mean, where do we even start? Let me start with the Pope, first of all.
Yes.
Look, all the news media outlets are leading with this. It's wall to wall, and the feedback that I'm getting, quite honestly, is people are like, "Why? Is there a tune-out?"
Well, I think there might be for people who have no interest in Pope Francis or in the papacy or in Roman Catholicism. But here's the thing I'll say about the personality of Cardinal Bergoglio, Pope Francis. Mm-hmm. He really had an everyman quality that we haven't seen in not only popes, but in leadership in the world in a long time. Mm-hmm. The last couple of popes struck people as being rather conservative, even austere figures, Benedict and John Paul. They were certainly on the conservative side of Catholicism, and they cast a very sort of cerebral image, if you will. Yep. This man was much more an everyday sort of person. Mm. And I think that was probably attractive to people, not only because he was a religious leader, but because he was a world leader who seemed to have a bit of humanity around him. Yeah. And how many global figures, how many global political leaders, and the Pope is a political leader. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the head of state of the Vatican. He's virtually it's a one-man state. Yeah. How many world leaders project that? So I think some people were probably drawn to his humanity and his humility. Now, as for the politics and the theology of the Roman Catholic Church and so on, sure, there are a lot of people who have no particular interest in that. Yeah. Although many people in this country still profess an attachment to Roman Catholicism, even if they're no longer practicing the faith.
Yeah. I draw a parallel almost to the royal family, to the passing of the Queen in a way, right? It kind of has that allure, even if people who aren't British or English or a member of the Commonwealth, it still draws people in.
It does, and of course, with Her Majesty the Queen, many of us knew no one else on the money, and no one else in Buckingham Palace. She was queen for so long, we became very familiar with her. Not so much so with the Pope, who was Pope for 12 years, which is a reasonable period of time, but certainly nothing compared to the 70-year reign of the Queen. But sure, no, there is some attachment or some interest, probably for that same reason. But again, I really think that many people were able to identify with the humanity of Pope Francis, who I think he was almost, he was a complete outlier if you look at the way that the papacy has always been perceived.
Yeah, but isn't it one of the challenges with the Catholic Church is that line is not perhaps linear? That could move again, right, away from some of these. It
could, although most of the people who will be choosing the next leader of the Catholic Church were appointed by Francis. Right. So, it seems likely to me that the next pope will be more like Francis than unlike him, although, the cardinal electors of the Roman Catholic Church have been known to come up with surprises before.
Yeah. I guess when I'm thinking about the media coverage, do you think that perhaps the media reacts the way that it did 20 years ago or whenever and feel as though that there's that much interest in this, or are we out of touch in a bit with leading with it and assuming that the public wants to consume all things papacy?
Well, a lead, we used to debate this in the newsroom all the time. A lead is a debatable decision.
Sure.
And I'm prepared to accept anybody's lead if they can make a pretty good case for it, not to say I'm always going to agree with it. I think when the Pope passes, it's a big international and global story. And I think it's probably worth being the lead story on major national and international newscasts. For how long? Again, that's debatable. His funeral will be probably the lead story. Yeah. And then the watch will begin for the white smoke when all of the red-hatted cardinals gather there in St. Peter's Basilica.
How about the history of the Catholic Church, and the checkered history and the scandal that goes with it? Is it too early to bring that up, or is it appropriate to bring that up, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, is it appropriate to bring it up? It can't be ignored.
Yeah.
An institution as old as the Roman Catholic Church, with as many demonstrated failings as the Roman Catholic Church, is bound to be subject to criticism from outside the church and even from within the Catholic Church. And let me just say on that point too, Todd, that I believe Pope Francis was a divisive figure within the Roman Catholic Church because there is a conservative or traditional element in Catholicism that thinks this man went way too far. So, it's not even unanimous within the Roman Catholic Church that I would say he was well loved in the sense that he was the leader of the church and well respected and so on. But there were many within the hierarchy of the church who didn't agree with some of what he was doing. But look, institutions have to be wholly accountable for everything they do, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. And this is as applicable to the Roman Catholic Church as it is to the government of Canada or the government of Nova Scotia or the Supreme Court or the United States presidency. If once you reach the state or the level of being an institution, you are accountable for all that you do and do not do.
Right, yeah. Tradition and nostalgia is so wrapped up in all of this, though, is it not? I mean, it really is as much about that as it is about religion, in a way.
Well, sure, and in a world where so many things are changing all the time, maybe we do cling to some of the things that don't change quite so much. I think that was one of the reasons we were, I think, as a people and maybe even as a global community, why we were moved by the passing of the Queen. I mean, she represented tremendous continuity. For those of us who grew up in countries on which, as I say, she appears on the money. But even for those who had no particular attraction to the British monarchy or the monarchy at all, she was a consistent figure. And people like to have some things they can cling to. So, these institutions have some value for the consistency they bring. And, that is also the problem with institutions. Many of them are reluctant or unable or unwilling to change.
And it's an opportunity to breathe some new life into the organization, to reinvigorate people to want to get involved in Catholicism again.
Sure. And the thing about change in any institution, Todd, is that any amount of change is going to be considered too much by some and not enough by others.
Yeah.
That's the nature of change.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a call for moderate when it comes to same-sex marriage and all of these things. Yet the hardcore, ardent Catholic out there, in some others, in particular other parts of the world where they're much more conservative, you're not. You want to be careful that you don't drive those people away, right?
Well, true.
That's a dance, is it not?
And that is some of what is going on in the institution of the Roman Catholic Church, as I understand it, that there are elements that are resisting modernization or liberalization.
Yeah.
I mean, those terms are sometimes even controversial.
Yeah.
But there are those within the Catholic Church who say, look, there is no doctrinal or traditional foundation for same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
And, of course, they are more expert in the doctrine and the traditions of the Roman Catholic Church than I am. And then on the other side, there are people who say, well, look, we need to find a way to modernize and to be responsive to the modern world. Then there are those on the other side who say, no, we are here to resist modernity.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That rigidity sometimes is the glue that keeps institutions together.
In some cases, yes.
Yes. Wow, interesting stuff. So I guess it's selecting the new pope. What do you think they'll be looking for?
I don't know. You know, I mean, I believe there are 137 cardinal electors. You have to be under 80 years of age to be a voter.
Yeah.
The voting age is under 80.
Yeah.
No, I mean, most of these men, and they're all men, of course, I think most of them are pretty clever people.
Yeah.
Because you don't rise to the pinnacle of power in any institution without being, I would say, and they may be very upset if they ever heard this. Yeah. Chances of a cardinal hearing any of this probably not very good. No, but I mean, most of them are fairly politically astute, and they know how to behave in a political fashion within a theological or in a religious institution. I would think that many of them will say, and I'm not ridiculing this, many of them will say they will be guided by the power of the Holy Spirit, which maybe comes over them in a way that I don't understand.
Do you believe that?
Well, I believe it if they say it. I mean, if you wake up in the morning and you have a certain feeling, to what do you attribute the feeling? It's not for me to say whether it's the Holy Spirit or some other spirit. Yeah. I respect whatever inspires a logical or even perhaps illogical decision. If you feel intuitively about something, I tend to trust my intuition.
Well, it's interesting because you talk with the 160 cardinals or whatever the number is, that the voting at all men, of course, including all of the clergy, all men, in a world in which we are supposedly moving away from institutions and the patriarchy. This is kind of flies in the face of all that, does it?
Well, the Roman Catholic Church has never made any move away from patriarchy.
No, but I guess the point is that the intense interest globally that this is getting, including from this radio station, would seem to support that.
It will either intensify and magnify the criticism of the Roman Catholic Church, or perhaps it will in some way create new interest in what is going on. The one thing that I can say is that it is an ancient process, and in that sense, it's of great interest to people. It's been done this way for a very, very long time, shrouded in great mystery, of course. And what goes on in the Sistine Chapel is sub rosa, behind closed doors, and we only know what has been decided based on the color of the smoke that emanates from that little chimney.
And we will all be glued to our television sets watching that, will we not?
Well, I mean, there will be cameras on it all the time. I don't know whether CNN will probably have it in a little box down in the corner, I suppose. No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Lots of other things to get to. Steve Murphy. Continue our chat with Steve Murphy when we come back.
Axe.
All right. Continuing our chat with Steve Murphy here in studio. Steve Murphy. How about this Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well,
when's
the parade?
The Stanley Cup parade is being organized as we speak.
Listen, I'll tell you something. I'm a Habs fan, but I'd like to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Look, I would love for it to be the Montreal Canadiens. If I'm being honest, as Simon Cowell used to say, if I'm being honest, it's probably not going to be the Montreal Canadiens.
No.
But I would love to see a Canadian team win the Cup. I really would, particularly given all that's going on this continent with our neighbor.
Yeah.
I would love to see us win the Cup. So I'm going to be very magnanimous.
Okay.
And I'm going to support every Canadian team in every series. Toronto-Ottawa is a little tough.
Yeah.
May I be honest about this?
Sure, please do.
I will say I'd like to see Toronto beat Ottawa.
Why?
Because before Kenny Dryden made me a Montreal Canadiens fan back in the early 1970s, as a boy, I was a Leafs fan the last time they won the Stanley Cup. 1967 with Allman and Keon, all those great guys.
That's right.
So, yeah, if I have to pick a favorite in Toronto, Ottawa, I'm going to go for Toronto.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I want to see a Canadian team win the Cup. I really do.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on these junior players and this trial going on? It's sad,
sad story.
Yeah.
I mean, they've pleaded not guilty. They're entitled to their day in court. I think, though, to set aside the specifics of this case, that hockey, the sport, and the governing bodies of hockey are finally recognizing there are some problems going on, and I think they're going to have to deal with them in a meaningful way. It is very unfortunate, particularly for those who are the victims of this behavior, that it is being done in this way. It's a very sad day. People talk about a sad day for the sport, yes, of course, but a particularly sad day for the young women who were the victims of conduct like this. I'm not passing any judgment on the specifics of this case because I don't have enough knowledge to do so. Yeah. But there has been bad conduct around sport. We know that, and it's time to own up to it and do something meaningful about it.
Hazing, we know, has been a huge issue. There's been all types of problems.
A lot of it, Todd, in our lifetime, maybe more so in mine than yours because I'm older than you, but a lot of it was written off as being, it's just manly behavior. Boys being boys. Yeah. Look, that's all nonsense. 70s, let's not tell our sons and our brothers.
In the 70s and 80s, it was God knows what happened.
Let's not say any more of that nonsense. Yeah. That's not manly behavior. That's not boys being boys. That's bullying, misconduct, abusive behavior, and we have to make a real meaningful effort to bring it to an end.
Do you think hockey and the game of hockey has the clout and the power that it once had in this country, or do you think it's tailed off?
Well, you know what? In this country, hockey, the game and the governing bodies are institutions, and like all institutions, we talked about this as it pertains to the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah. All institutions are falling out of favor with people because the accumulated records of our institutions are not always commendable. And certainly a lot has gone on in hockey that was covered up. Yeah. And, when we see cover-ups in politics or anywhere else, we call for transparency, and it's reasonable to call for transparency in sport. And in this country, hockey is religion. Yeah. Yeah. What
about salaries, escalating salaries, spiraling out of control? I mean, Vladdy Guerrero, whatever they paid him, $500 million. I mean, that was just a little ridiculous, if not completely ridiculous.
Somebody should figure out what he's going to make per swing of the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
And bear in mind that he gets the same whether he hits the ball or doesn't. Yeah. Look, it's business. Yeah. It's business. Vladimir Guerrero has been essential to the Toronto organization. And you remember when it looked like they were going to lose Guerrero, the crying and the gnashing of teeth that was going on, because people in Toronto really like Guerrero. So he's a franchise player. Yeah. These franchises are worth a tremendous amount of money. He puts people in the stands. Mm-hmm. How many jerseys have his name blazoned on the back? Yeah. So, it's a business. But look, the money's all out of whack. But isn't money out of whack everywhere? I mean, here we are in a country paying a ball player $500 million U.S. dollars, and we have people who can't afford groceries, people who can't find apartments, people living in tents. I mean, look, there is a huge disconnect, and one is not the cause of the other. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that, but there's certainly a tremendous gap between the top and the bottom.
But the cost of entertainment in general, ticket prices, this is something that Donald Trump talked about looking into, for goodness sakes. But ticket prices...
I'm sure he's worried about paying for a ticket to the Super Bowl.
That's right. But ticket prices to concerts and all of it, it's spiraled right out of control.
Yeah, but the buildings are full, Todd.
Yeah, that's right. Why is that? People can afford it, obviously, right? Credit?
Well, it's all a matter of personal choice. It's one of the reasons I don't even like the word affordability as it pertains to the cost of living. To me, a person can afford a Lexus if they make a lot of money. Yeah. The average person just needs good basic transportation. Yeah. This is a cost of living issue at the real level. Right. Affording tickets to a concert, that's not affordability. That's a choice. Yeah. A choice to either take it out of your bank account or put it on your credit card. Yeah. But what about the people who can't afford to buy a stalk of celery to make some soup? I mean, and that's kind of, again, the dichotomy we're looking at. Yeah. So, sure, look, the people who've got the cash, the middle class, the upper class, the people who've got credit, they're going to pay any number of dollars to see any act they want and any sporting event they want. And people hop in planes and fly to... Well, look, I mean, how many people are going up for a Leafs game? Yeah, that's right. Or an Ottawa or a Sens game in the series. And fine if you've got the money. Yeah, that's right. If you've got the cash. Go ahead.
How about locally here? There used to be a regular stadium talk. You guys, CTV, talked about it regularly. Yeah. We talked about it regularly on the show.
At one point, council earmarked $25 million for it.
That's right. Is that dead and will it resurface at some point?
Well, if it isn't dead, it's hibernating. I'm going to say this because I actually believe it, and I know there will be lots who don't agree. I think the city needs a stadium.
Yeah.
I think a city of 500,000 people, which the Halifax region is if you take the whole municipality, I think it's reasonable to have a large outdoor facility that can accommodate large crowds, but not just for sports.
Mm-hmm. And where would it be built?
Well, I would be prepared to entertain debates. I mean, look, we're looking at the Wanderers grounds again, expanding that. I guess the city's in some talks about that. I'm not sure that site is large enough. But here's my point. It can't be just for a sport or for sports. There are other things that can be done in large outdoor venues, concerts, other large events. And all I'm saying is that in a city this size, a municipality this size, we ought to be able to find a way to provide such a facility for the public because there is demand for it. Mm-hmm. Now, is it the top priority of the council, or is it the top priority for anybody apart from maybe those who've got a vested interest in a sports franchise? No, it is not a top priority. Is it something that should be on the list? I think it is. And I'm prepared to hear from lots of people who will disagree with me. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to choosing priorities, there will always be disagreements.
Right.
And that's a good thing.
Right. Absolutely. We got lots of other things to talk about, including the federal election. Believe me, folks, we're going to get to it. We're saving kind of the best for the last half hour. How's that sound, Steve?
I got a question. Jackson Brown called. Yes. He wants to know what happened to running on empty.
I know, eh?
I don't even know what time it is anymore. 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going, hey, where's Jackson?
I know.
Vanessa, is Jackson Brown on strike? He's missing the 3 cents a day, 3 cents per play. Anyway.
I hear you.
I love Jackson Brown, too.
I hear you. I miss it as well. Okay, we'll be back to Steve Murphy.
Facts.
All right, continuing our chat with Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, friend of the show, contributor to podcasts. Shall I go on, Steve?
I'm tired just listening to it.
I know, me too. Order of Canada.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So listen, let's talk about the federal election.
Is there an election?
There's an election. I thought I'd save this for this half hour because there's a lot to unpackage.
Mm-hmm.
I guess predictions first off.
Well, unless all the polls are wrong, and I underscore all the polls are wrong. And by the way, polling is an imprecise science, but properly conducted polls, properly reported, are a usually reliable reflection of public opinion at any given moment. Having said that, there are polls that are not reliable. There are pollsters that are not reliable. There's reporting of polls that's not reliable, much to my regret. And I do fault us in the media sometimes for not being precise enough in the way we report what the pollsters are telling us. Having said all of that, unless all of the polls are wrong, it appears that Mark Carney is going to get a government. Mm-hmm.
How about the assertion that the crowd sizes are out of hand for the Conservatives and on social media and other websites? I get people sending me links all the time. They show massive lineups and huge enthusiasm. Why do you think that doesn't translate into polling numbers?
Well, it does. Pierre Poilievre is getting huge numbers because he's going to get 39 or 40% of the popular vote.
Yeah.
Pierre Poilievre is going to get, in all likelihood, more votes than Aaron O'Toole and more votes than Andrew Scheer, both of whom won the popular vote in Canada.
Yeah.
He may get more popular votes than Stephen Harper, who got a majority government.
Yeah.
And the reason Mr. Poilievre is getting large crowds is because a lot of people are going to vote for him.
Yeah.
And they're very good. The Conservatives are masters of the ground game when it comes to filling up buildings in areas where they know they can draw a crowd. And this is a point I think we better start talking about now because we're going to be talking about this on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Irrespective of the outcome on Monday. Again, I'll say these comments are predicated on my suspicion that the Liberals get a government. The Conservatives are going to get a lot of votes. It's going to be a very binary choice in this country. By some metrics, 80% of Canadians are going to vote Liberal or Conservative for one of those two parties. Even if the Liberals get a massive majority government with, say, 44, 45, 46% of the popular vote, and I'm not predicting that, but even if they do, The voices of the 39 or 40% who vote Conservative have to be listened to and taken seriously, more so than ever before, because it's going to be a very binary choice. Mm-hmm. And I say that not only because there will be provinces in this country that will be mostly blue on Tuesday morning. Alberta will be. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the prairies, they're going to be blue. There are going to be a lot of people listening to this show who vote for the Conservative Party and whose voices should not be ignored. Their points and the reasons that they have chosen not to vote the way a larger number of Canadians did, those arguments need to be taken seriously and respected.
Yeah.
And because, again, it's going to be a binary choice. Yes, there are lots of green votes to be had, and I know the Bloc will get some votes in Quebec and may even do better than expected. The NDP, which has always been a force in this province, they may or may not elect a member here. I'm not going to make a prediction about that because I honestly don't know. I know what the polls say, but I also know there are some deep NDP roots on this peninsula particularly. Those voices are migrating, many of them, the progressive, center progressive votes, toward the Liberals.
So how does Mark Carney do that then? How do you listen to other voices that don't share your political ideology or didn't support you?
Well, you first of all have to find a way to invite all those voices to continue to be heard, even if you don't want to hear them. Well, I think, for example, and Danielle Smith has become a very polarizing figure in the country, and whether you like her or her style or her politics is not the issue. She has a large constituency in the province of Alberta, and she's got to be listened to. Now, that doesn't mean that Mr. Carney has to give her everything that she wants or demands, but those expectations, those aspirations need to be listened to in the same way that the aspirations of Quebec were listened to. You know, the Quebec we have today and the arrangement that Quebec has within this federation is much different than it was when René Lévesque came to power in Quebec in 1976. Many of the things the separatists wanted then, they have now, but they have it within the confines of the federation. So I think we need to listen to the voices, And I've often said, Todd, and I'll repeat it here in your show today, common sense lives on common ground. Let's find more common ground. It's going to be a challenge, though, I'll tell you. If west of the Greater Toronto area, say west of the 905, if it's mostly blue, and east of the 905, it's mostly red, we have a problem.
Yeah. Why do you think some of the accusations against Carney when it came to Brookfield Management and the tax havens and some things that would normally, I would think, stick with somebody and create some problems for somebody, haven't seemed to have moved the needle against him? Why do you think that is?
Well, I have a couple of theories on it. First of all, this was a very short process. I mean, only, what is today, the 23rd of April? So when did Christopher Freeland pull the pin? It was early December, so January, February, March, April. So 4.5 months. Yeah. After 4.5 months, Freeland is gone. Yeah. Trudeau is gone. Sean Fraser's gone and back. Wayne Long, gone and back, St. John MP. Mark Carney has risen to the leadership of the Liberal Party, and he is Prime Minister of Canada, and we're having a federal election. Yeah. Now, that's all pretty quick. Yeah. So there has not been a great deal of time for anyone to define Mark Carney. And on the other side of it, I don't think that there was much effort, or perhaps enough effort, put into redefining Mr. Poilievre, who rose to prominence in this country as a conservative attack dog. He's always been a remarkably articulate, glib, intelligent, whip-smart quote machine. He was when he was a young MP. He was elected when he was 26 years old. This man has been in politics his whole life. Some people consider that to be a bad thing. I'm not sure it's a bad thing. I mean, he knows his way around politics. He knows how to get things done. He's leader of his party. But many people tell me they find him chippy and chirpy and Trumpy. And at this moment in Canadian history, I don't think we want chippy and chirpy, and we certainly don't want Trumpy. But there wasn't perhaps enough effort made to recast Mr. Poilievre as Prime Minister in waiting. In the debate last week, best I ever saw Pierre Poilievre. I thought Poilievre put in an extremely good performance in the English debate. I really do. I thought he looked good and he sounded good. He was on message. He resisted, and you talk about it here, he resisted the three-word slogans. He focused on his message, change. Change is a good message when you're up against a government that's been in power for 10 years. But that Pierre Poilievre, where has he been? Mm-hmm. Where has he been?
Well, to me, that would be the easiest sell that you could make, is that you can change the leader, but you're still getting basically the same cast of characters that have resulted in a lot of our affordability challenges, immigration challenges, all of these metrics that are not good, that are definable. To me, that should be pretty solid campaign.
But where was that argument? But that argument wasn't being made, I think, strongly enough. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think the Conservatives were slow to respond to the threat posed by Trump, particularly because in a country where we are often defined by our differences, all of a sudden we were all in the same great big boat, the 51st state boat. Yeah. And we were all offended by the way our prime minister, even though Mr. Trudeau was personally unpopular, every Canadian was offended that the President of the United States would refer to the Prime Minister of Canada as governor. That's a disrespectful thing to do. So I think that what happened along the way is that Canadians became quite unified when the issue was Trump. Now, Nick Nanos, the pollster for CTV, who is one of our better pollsters in this country, in my experience, Nick Nanos has done research that says when the discussion is around Trump and U.S.-Canada relations, Carney wins. When the debate shifts to economic issues, the so-called affordability file, which, again, I don't like the term, the cost of living issues, bread and butter, jobs, Poilievre wins. And that tells you that Poilievre's message does resonate when he's getting the attention.
How much of a role, I had Sean Fraser on earlier, you mentioned it. I asked him about how much of a role that Mark Carney had when it came to advising Justin Trudeau, and he really downplayed it, very much downplayed it.
Well, he's campaigning for office, and he's a very able man, by the way.
Right, I get that. But
I don't quarrel with that.
But I don't agree with him, quite honestly. I think there's enough evidence out there to show that he had a pretty good ear of Justin Trudeau for at least 5 years.
Todd, the reason that Chrystia Freeland quit is because Mr. Trudeau was going to appoint Mr. Carney Minister of Finance.
Right.
In order to be a minister in Mr. Trudeau's government, you would have to agree with Mr. Trudeau.
Right.
This is a silly argument. Of course Mark Carney was a Trudeau Liberal.
Yeah, absolutely. So
why, of course, he was almost in the cabinet.
Right. So why, again, I just don't understand why the Conservatives are failing to capitalize on what seems to me pretty good ammunition.
Well, again, I think we've been nibbling around the edges of all the reasons. I mean, the influence, the impact of the Trump shadow over Canadian politics cannot be overstated. And every time it comes to Trump, and every time Trump insults Canada, every time he puts on a tariff, every time he does anything, it causes ripples in our election campaign, and that has kind of refocused the election from what would normally be the issues, mainly domestic things, to existential things. And the thing about Carney is Carney does project an image of sort of calm. I mean, somebody said to me, and I don't know Mark Carney, I've never interviewed him, he sort of projects the sort of boring banker image, Yeah. And the only time you really want a boring banker is when you need money.
Yeah.
And when you need confidence. So, he's got certain advantages that come with the fact that his resume, apart from having been governor of the Bank of Canada and governor of the Bank of England, and we know that he ran Brookfield Asset Management, we know he was a Mandarin, a federal Mandarin, but how well do we really know Carney versus Poilievre, who we know very well because he's been in the same role, doing the same thing as a conservative attack dog, and doing it very well for a very long time. Yeah. So in one sense, we don't know Carney particularly well, and maybe we know Poilievre too well.
Yeah. Trust, really, it comes down to trust with Poilievre. I hear it repeatedly. People and again, like you said, he's going to get a lot of support. But but in trying to sway that undecided voter, trust seems to be the barrier. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think trust is always an issue. I think in most elections, particularly where change is on the ballot, it needs to be a change with which you're comfortable. So with Mr. Trudeau gone, we've already had a change at the top of the ticket in Mark Carney. And now the question is, how much more change is the average person looking for? How much more change is the average person comfortable with? Because trust and comfort, these are all sort of in the same category, if you ask me. Yeah. People need to be comfortable with the change that they're going to vote for. And I think there is some discomfort with Mr. Poilievre, but probably because he's been pretty good at his job. I mean, here is a man who was leader of the opposition, and he was a very effective leader of the opposition, by the way.
Yeah.
I think you would score him very, very highly. He's a Thomas Mulcair quality of opposition leader. I mean, sharp and focused and so on. But, the hard reality is he campaigned to get rid of Trudeau, and he's gone. He campaigned to get rid of the consumer carbon tax, the front-end tax, not the law, because the law is still on the books.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
So it does enable Carney to say, well, you're against Trudeau and you're against the carbon tax, and well, they're both gone.
And some of those quotes about Canada being broken and all of that stuff, and they compare them to Trump, and people hear that, and that's got a lot of power.
And there's another point to be made there, too, and that is whatever our problems in Canada are, and we have real problems, and maybe some people consider us to be broken in some respects, we are not nearly as broken as we could be and will be if Trump has his way.
Yeah.
So it's almost a question of how broken are we now versus how broken could we become?
All right, so let's suggest that the Liberals form a majority government, and what's that mean for the Conservative Party? Another teardown?
Oh boy! Well,
another. I mean, what next? Right?
Well, after Aaron O'Toole won the popular vote but didn't get the government last time. The feeling within the Conservative Party was that he hadn't been conservative enough. Yeah. So we now have Mr. Poilievre, who is considerably more conservative on policy. But the Conservative Party, don't forget, is a modern creation. And it seems to me that the Conservative Party of Canada is potentially rupturing along the same fault line on which it was put together, which was the marriage, I would say reluctant marriage of the Progressive Conservative Party with the old Reform or the Canadian Alliance. They were jammed together by Harper and McKay, but it was never really a comfortable marriage. Harper managed it very well, but he's the only one who's ever done it.
Yeah.
And he had Peter MacKay helping him, by the way. Let's not. Peter MacKay is such an important figure in the history of the Conservative Party and in the success that the Conservatives had in getting into government and staying in government. He is a very. I don't know. We've seen the last of him.
Yeah.
He's a very able political operative, and he played a large role in the success of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Okay, a bit more time with Steve Murphy. We'll be right back. All right, time flies. We're almost an hour with Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor friend of the show. Steve, how far away do you think that the Liberals are trying to keep Justin Trudeau away from anything close to being visible in the next few days?
Well, I think the answer to that question is clear. How often have we heard and seen the former Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Apart from that selfie of him at Canadian Tire buying a potato masher. I think it was a potato masher. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think that the decision has been made that Mr. Trudeau should stay away in the same way that Joe Biden largely, he backed off. He was still president. That's the difference. But no, I don't think there's any desire to have Mr. Trudeau.
Yeah.
His name's been taken off the signs. And, as it should be. He's not the leader of the party. But no, I don't think Mr. Trudeau is considered to be an asset.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's being kind.
I think it's now clear too, Todd, that a lot of people who said that they were going to vote for another party were really just saying, "I've had enough of Mr. Trudeau."
That's right.
Because the swing in popular support in the polls. And by the way, many of the people who now don't believe the polls that say the Liberals are leading had no trouble believing the polls when they said that when the Conservatives were leading. So either buy the polls or you don't, imperfect as they can be. But, you can't get a 25-point swing in polling unless there was a really key trigger for the change in support. And I think Mr. Trudeau was the trigger.
Yeah. And Mark Carney was the only person I think that would be capable to have pulled it off.
Perhaps.
Yeah. I don't know who else it would have been.
I don't know that any member of Mr. Trudeau's cabinet
certainly not Chrystia Freeland.
Well, I didn't. I agreed with you. I didn't think Chrystia Freeland was the one. I did think Karina Gould represented an entirely different image for the Liberal Party, a much younger person, and so on. By the way, I want to say this because this is the forum where it should happen. Pierre Poilievre should be on this show. Carney should be on this show.
Yeah.
They should all come in here and take some calls.
Yeah.
They should do long-form interviews, and they haven't done them.
Nope.
There have been a few of these softballs in Quebec where that's part of the political culture. Look, the electorate's not well served when the Prime Minister, the leader of the Liberal Party, who happens to be the Prime Minister, Mr. Poilievre, who was the leader of the opposition, these people should be taking questions and giving the listener, viewer, and reader an opportunity to see how they perform under pressure. Yeah. It's not just whether they can spit out the answers. Yeah. I mean, we know politicians are brilliant at spitting out talking points. Yeah. But how do they perform when they're being pressured, when the feet are to the fire?
Yeah, yeah.
They're not doing it.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Too much danger.
Yeah.
Too much danger that they will say something that they will regret, or there will be an incident that becomes an issue. My 2008 interview with Stéphane Dion is sometimes held up as an example of that, where there was danger in it, and you and I could sit here and discuss and debate that till the cows come home. But the point is that those long-form interviews give readers, listeners, and viewers an opportunity to assess the leaders in a way that the short bursts and the limited questions. What's this nonsense? 4 questions at a news conference. No follow-up questions. Come on. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Not good enough.
Jagmeet Singh, is this his last kick at the can? Looks like the NDP could be decimated to non-party status.
Well, if there is a surprise and Mr. Singh ends up with 40 seats, I dare say he stays. I don't think there's a chance that's going to happen. I think that Mr. Singh is setting up his party to do the best it can, which will hopefully retain official party status. I think the House of Commons of Canada is a better place when there are New Democrats in it. Yeah. And I say that not because I necessarily agree or disagree with anything they say or everything they do, but I do think that the NDP has been a moderating influence in Canadian politics, and I like having New Democrats. I like having Greens there. Yeah. I like having many voices there. Yeah. The whole question of having a separatist party from Quebec in the House of Commons is another matter probably not to be debated or discussed.
Speaking of the Greens and being ousted from the debate at the very last minute, that seemed to be the timing of that was unfair in my opinion.
Well, the debate commission didn't do a very good job. Should the Greens have been there? Well, look, let me just put it out there. I know what the criteria are, and I know the Greens didn't meet them. But here's something to chew on. Todd Veinotte, Steve Murphy, everybody listening to the Veinotte Show right now. Yeah. We have Green candidates on our ballots. Mm-hmm. We don't have any Bloc Québécois candidates on our ballots. Yeah. So, we need to do something to offer a countervail to the unusual situation we have, in which, in one of our provinces, a party dedicated to the destruction of the country as we know it is given national airtime, when another national party is not. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sitting here with the solution, but I am sitting here recognizing a problem. And by the way, I'm quite interested in what Blanchet has to say, and I find him to be quite an engaging figure. Actually,
smart guy.
He doesn't want to remain part of my country, and I wish he did. But my point here is not to shut down his voice, but I do wonder whether it's the right thing to do to mute the voices of a party that is on offer to millions of Canadians. Millions of us have the opportunity to vote Green. Many more millions than Quebecers have an opportunity to vote for the Bloc. So, what's right? Let's just take a look at it.
All right, here's a quick email from Linda. I think she encapsulates the hour well. She's glad to hear Steve Murphy on your air. Calm, measured, and thoughtful. There you go.
Well, Linda, thanks. Gee, I appreciate that.
And you'll be back Tuesday, 10:30 to 11, to unpackage the election results.
Yeah, well, Ed, you have the tapes ready, and all the things I said today, they were demonstrated to be wrong Monday night. You can play them back. Anyway, no, it's great to be on. Really appreciate it. And I just want to say one thing about John Gillis.
Sure.
I give John Gillis and this radio station tremendous credit for offering him here on Wednesdays for what he does. Mm-hmm. And one of your callers said this last week. John doesn't have to do this. He's a busy guy.
Yeah, he sure is.
But I think it's a tremendous service that he provides the community, and the radio station enables him to do it. But good on Gillis for doing something that I think is of real value.
Yeah, for sure.
To the community.
And not one health-related call today for you.
Thank goodness. But John has plenty of political opinions, though,
Yeah, he certainly does.
Yeah.
He certainly does.
And a pretty good pedigree.
That's right. Absolutely. So we will see you on Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Steve Murphy, your calls when we come back. All right, that was a great hour with Steve Murphy. Steve will be back on Tuesday to break down the federal election results. He'll be with us from 10:30 to 11. Also, Lori Turnbull will join us on Tuesday morning to help analyze what will be the federal election. In the meantime, we've got some water to flow under the bridge, and we have some more talk, I'm sure, about the federal election. The clock is ticking before Canadians head to the polls to cast their ballot April 28th, which is, as mentioned, Monday. Both the Liberals and Conservatives are critiquing each other's platforms, with Liberal leader Mark Carney saying the Tory platform relies on phantom math, while Pierre Poilievre is charging the Liberal platform was authored for former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Polls suggest the Liberals are ahead of the Conservatives, with the majority of respondents to a Leger survey saying they think Carney will win. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, meanwhile, is seeing support for his party dwindle, the Green Party falling below them. What are your thoughts on this? What are your predictions on all of this? Are you possibly undecided? I would dare say that there wouldn't be very many people out there who are undecided at this point. But if you are undecided, I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear why you're still undecided and what you're waiting to hear to make your mind up. Are you undecided? Priority one. That's who I want to hear from first. If you're undecided and you're listening right now, give us a call and tell me why. I'm very curious what's going on. I would dare say that the vast majority of decisions are baked in, but we shall see. And what are some of the circumstances that led to the massive Conservative lead deteriorating? We talked a lot about this with Steve Murphy over the last hour, including Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau and his exodus. That was a huge component to all of this. So give us a call. You can talk about that or whatever else you'd like to get into. 902-405-6000. Also, something that we're going to talk on Friday to the guests of this story. I saw this on the Global News website. I'll read a bit of the story and then ask you a couple of questions about it. It's about tipping. The story says, having worked in restaurants before opening their own, Vincent Morley and Christian Green always hated losing tips while not getting paid consistently. So they came up with a new idea to pay their staff more and get rid of tips entirely. Quote, we have done away with tips because we don't believe that our customers should have to subsidize the wages of our employees. That's kind of the base level of what we're doing. That's according to Vincent Morley, one of the co-owners of the Bonfire restaurant in Halifax. Currently, the Bonfire employs 5 staff members who receive $20 an hour in pay and 50% of the profits earned at the end of the month through a profit-sharing model. Morley adds that he hopes to increase the hourly wage to something more livable, such as $22 or $23 an hour in the near future. I thought this was very interesting, and Vanessa has reached out to them, and we will have them on the show on Friday. But in the meantime, I thought I'd ask you this. Would you be willing to pay more at a restaurant if you knew that you didn't have to leave a tip at the end of the day? Would that be something that would entice you to walk in and frequent? And is tipping getting out of control? Because I think that as the price at a restaurant are going up exponentially, and they're asking for tips now to this 25, as much as 25%, which is quite a bit of money on $80 or $50 or $75. That's real money now. And 15%, that used to be the standard, the industry standard. That is now almost shunned and looked down upon to just, you're considered cheap if you only tip 15%. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Would you frequent a restaurant like Bonfire, this restaurant in Halifax, which is paying their staff $20 an hour and more in the future, and including profit sharing, but they're saying no tips? What are your thoughts on that, folks? Do you think more restaurants should go in that direction? 902-405-6000 or whatever else you've got in your mind. 902-405-6000. Steve, hello.
Hey, Todd, thanks for taking my call. So I'll answer your first question about the election and kind of, why people are undecided. My opinion is I'm not undecided, but, I struggle hard with what to do. I think the parties are too far apart. Canadians are more of a centrist, or most Canadians are more of a centrist political view. I think that each party is too far to the left and too far to the right. If we can get something back to the middle, where we're, respecting women's reproductive rights and kind of doing the, supporting the folks out west with the oil and gas and pipelines across the country. We need a common ground and common people to get us back to the middle ground. I think is the biggest and most important factor.
Okay. Any political party doing that or more poised, better set to deliver that? What are your thoughts?
I don't think they are. I think that the people that they have in place are further and further dividing that problem. I think if the Liberals were kind of up against it to kind of get a decent leader in, and they needed to change it up and get rid of the same old characters. But on the other hand, I think Poilievre is, he's got that reputation of being too Trump-esque. The slogan thing, everything else. I think that they need the right guy or the right person to get to bring people together and kind of get it back to the middle. Steve alluded to it in your last hour, which he had a great point. I don't think we've seen the last of Peter MacKay. I think if the Conservatives got Peter MacKay in there, they'd start to see that support in Eastern Canada, and it could really probably glue the country together. I think some of the folks in the hardcore Conservatives in the West would have to make some concessions, but I think that with the right people, that we could really get some real progress in this country.
Okay, Steve, appreciate your call. Thank you.
I got. That's not why I called, though. I got one point that I want to make, and I'm hoping you'll bring this up with councillors on the hot seat.
Okay.
We got a brand new highway that goes between Bedford and Dartmouth.
Yeah.
It's brand new. It's been open since November. You drive out there in the rain or the night, all the paint and everything is worn off the road. It doesn't look like it's a new highway. So who's holding whoever built this accountable? Or it's ridiculous that we got roundabouts with no lines. It's ridiculous that we got, infrastructure that's brand spanking new that isn't holding up or wasn't done right or whatever the case may be. But we need people held accountable. I'll bring up another one. In Lower Sackville, there's an intersection at Beaverbank Road and Stokel Drive that the city last 2 years spent a huge amount of capital money to redo the lights and everything at this intersection. It's been a problem since it was put in. Traffic is backed up for kilometers and kilometers in the morning, which it never was done before. So who's holding people accountable and making sure we're getting value for our dollar around here?
Good point. Great point. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Joe's an undecided voter. Hello, Joe.
Hey, what's going on, Todd?
Not much, you?
I'm doing okay. And congrats on, I haven't been able to chat with you about it, but, you know what? Like, awesome, dude.
Thanks,
awesome.
bud. Thank you.
Yeah. You know what? I wish I could see in the politics of this country is like getting rid of like partisanship, and like I wish Carney and Poilievre would actually work together. Like, I mean, this country needs like unification, and I mean, like that's basically my point. Like, and I love having like you have Steve on and Lori Turnbull, and those guys are great guests, and love listening to it. But I really wish like this country could like I hate infighting, which is partisanship, I guess. But I'd really like to see like these guys come together, like and sing and the Greens and the Bloc too. Like, this country needs unification right now, and like it's like, no, I'm gonna be the leader, and you're gonna follow my act, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I had a guy come by my place, just a candidate, and I said the same thing to him. Like I hate the division between the parties right now. We don't need that. We need unification, and yeah, I mean, like I guess that's my point.
So you're still undecided, Joe? That's correct?
Yeah. I'm torn. I don't know. Like, I think Poilievre's got some good points. I think Carney's got some good points. I think they actually are so different that we could use both of them.
Okay, Joe, appreciate the call.
Right on.
All right, take care. All right, 902-405-6000. If you are undecided, I want to hear from you. I would love to hear from people who are undecided and explain why you're undecided and what you're hoping to hear, what might change your mind, or whatever else you've got in your mind. Perhaps you're completely decided, your mind's made up, and you want to make your case for as to why. That's all good as well. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. If you are an undecided voter, give us a call and let Vanessa know that, and I will put you right on because I want to know why you're undecided. Now, of course, you can call if you're decided and you want to make your case. That's all well and good, or whatever else. You don't have to talk politics. You can talk whatever you like. But, again, if you're an undecided voter, I'd love to hear from you because I'd like to know why. Mike, hello.
Me, Mike?
You, Mike, are you undecided?
I am very undecided, and I can tell you exactly why. I'm in Cole Harbour, and Darren Fisher is the Liberal.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that called the cops on me, him and his staff. I tried for approximately 9 months calling his office and everything, and you know my situation financially.
Yeah.
And I called and called and called. I want to talk to him. You know, him and Trudeau were the guys that could make the difference in the old age pension. And anyway, he refused to call me for whatever reason. I never ever heard from him. And like I said, I called for months, leaving messages with the girls at his office and everything. So I'm getting more and more frustrated, and I'm calling up, and then they blacklisted my number. They wouldn't pick it up. They just left it go to the email or the answering machine when I called. That went on for months and months. So anyway, I left them a bit of a nasty message. No threats or anything, but just left them, you know, I'm frustrated. I'm really pissed that you represent me, bud. So anyway, that Saturday morning, that was a Friday afternoon, I called that Saturday morning. I wake up to pounding on the door, and it's the police at my door saying that Darren Fisher and the staff are really, you know, they don't want me to call anymore, and they're kind of nervous about me harassing them and stuff. Anyway, here's my point after all that. The only one I think really has a chance to defeat Fisher in Cole Harbour would be the Conservative. But I got to tell you, I've met with Poilievre a couple times when he was down here at these town halls, and he didn't even give my suggestion about the old increase in old age. Like, he didn't even, the second time I met him, he basically moved his hand when I was talking to him, and Buddy instantly come over and told me, you know, I got to go now because there's other people still waiting in line. And I'm like, well, I'm just trying to make my point here. Anyway, they shuffled me off as quick as they can. So I don't really feel he's got, well, we've heard nothing, I've heard nothing about seniors in all of the platforms. All I hear about is Donald Trump and all the other foolishness they're going. The world's, you know, sky's falling from Carney. Anyway, so I really like you had Michelle on there today.
Yeah.
And you had the NDP from, and you know, they make some great points and really goes along with my personal views on changes that need to be made in our country. And so I'm really, you know, do I go with the PC guy just to hope that, you know, the odds are better that he defeats Darren Fisher? Or, so I'm not sure right now what I'm going to do Monday, but I am definitely voting.
Okay, Mike.
I want to see that guy gone. I mean, you know, the number one reason they're in the seats that they're in is because of their constituents, and that just rubbed me so the wrong way with this guy.
Right.
That's a level of arrogance that I can't put up with.
So you're undecided, but you have decided you're not supporting the Liberals. Am I reading it correctly?
And I wouldn't have supported the Liberals anyway. I mean, This guy's talking about doubling Trudeau's. Like, I just don't understand the people that are, other than what we've talked about before with, you know, Liberals just voting because their whole ancestry was Liberal, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. And to run this country into more debt, I mean, I've got 3 grandchildren now, and someday there'll be great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. And they're going to be paying this stuff off forever.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Mike.
Have a good day.
Take care, bud. 902-405-6000. Mike, you're undecided. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm completely undecided, and I haven't made my mind yet. One of the reasons, it's not because I like both. It's because I don't like any of them.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's the more, like at first I was going to vote Poilievre when Trudeau was in. I was decided. But the more I hear Poilievre, the more he's pushing me away. But the more I hear Carney and the Liberals, I get pushed away too. So I'm like an orphan, if you want to say. The thing is, like, if I looked at when Harper was in power, we have the same issues that we had somewhat with Trudeau. Like, you know, people were complaining about gas price and so on. And, you know, like, and then it gets repeated. So every time I vote, it's like a deception. How do you say that? Like I'm deceived every time. So I don't know. It's a tough one. And I read both platform cover to cover, and it doesn't, like the CPC's platform doesn't add up, and Carney's doesn't add up also. So it's like, who am I gonna vote is probably for the less of the two evils. At that point today, I don't know. So, and I hear your show almost every day. So just to hear people's opinion, so maybe that will, you know, help me a little bit. But still, it's a very hard decision, especially now. It's an important one. It's hard to come up with one. So,
but you're voting for sure, right? You committed to vote for sure.
Absolutely. Like this, I will vote on Monday. I didn't vote early because obviously I didn't know. But I will vote for sure on Monday. Maybe I'll take my decision in the booth. I don't know. We'll see. But it's been a very hard. I voted O'Toole in the past one. I was comfortable with that, and obviously didn't win. But this time, it's a hard one. It's a very hard one.
Okay, Mike. Thanks for the call, pal. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Again, any undecided voters out there, I'd love to hear from you, or if you're decided, hear from you as well. But I'm curious, how many are undecided out there? And if so, why? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Continuing with your calls, so it reaches is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Looking for undecided voters. If any of you are undecided, give us a call. I want to know why, and what are you waiting for, and what might you be looking to hear by way of policy in order to sway your vote. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
I'm well. You're undecided, are you?
Yes, I really enjoy your show. Doing a great job.
Thank you.
And the reason I'm kind of teetering between I live in Cole Harbour, Dartmouth-Cole Harbour. I apologize to the constituents. And I ran for politics myself. And I'm kind of teetering between the PCs and the NDP. I like the PC's fiscal policy. And I like the NDP's social policy. But one thing they haven't addressed is taxation. They come up with the Conservatives came with the GST, the Liberals came with the carbon tax. It seems they're always taxing us, but they're not looking at reinstating Canada savings bonds, selling Crown corporations, maybe even selling part of Canada Post. And if these politicians can't agree on these things, I don't really know who to vote for, and that's the problem I have right now, because I think these should be addressed. We should stop putting more and more GST, all these taxes. Since 1876, we never had taxes like this. And it keeps on putting more taxes on us. And I think we need a way to have tax cuts, but also maintain our social programs.
Okay. Do you have and do any of the leaders? Do you have confidence in any of the leaders enacting some of these measures?
I just don't feel the Liberals are going to do it, because the Liberals are constantly have taxed us with carbon taxes and always finding new ways to tax us. So the NDP. So I'm kind of leaning into Poilievre. I think Poilievre's idea. He was the one who started to get rid of the carbon tax and other taxes when we had the GST break or HST break. And I'm kind of leaning in that direction now, because I keep on seeing taxation, and no breaks for the hard-working person. The middle-class person is being squeezed out of the market and out of our homes. And that's what I see. If some politician would actually say we're going to actually cut taxes and stick to it, not lie to us and say, well, the carbon tax is gone, but now we have a new tax called the trade war tax or something,
right, yeah.
which is even higher tax. And I'm tired of the wool being pulled over our eyes, making us think that they're going to cut taxes and really raise taxes. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, Dave. Appreciate the call. Take care.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Bob, hello.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
I'm a little upset. I'm a veteran of 35 years serving my country, and you and Steve this morning really depressed me so awful. I think I'm going to have to cut my hand off, because I voted PC, and you made me feel like I was voting for the party that should never be running as the federal party of Canada, and the only person that's going to save it is McKay up in Antigonish area. That area, and I don't know why you guys have such a hate on the PC party. I feel I'm ashamed I can go outside and tell people that I voted the way you and Steve call that party down. There's something awful. I don't know. I think they're doing the best they can. I think they should give it a chance, because the Liberal Party has put us down in cost of living. Look at the difference in gas price, and there's Carney taking the credit for it, and he wouldn't have done nothing unless Pierre put the pressure on. And so once in a while, I like to hear that Pierre does something right, and you guys are always saying he does nothing right. Even this morning, that outfit that said they're checking their budget thing, and the Liberals got a pass, they got okay, excuse me, and the Conservatives just got a showing. So it's always negative against the PCs. I mean, enough's enough. I mean, we're in Canada. Each party should equal coverage and treat it half decent, not treat it like a piece of losers.
Yeah, Bob, I'm going to disagree with you completely and 100%. I think we gave them a fair shake. I think we were critical of all parties involved and gave all parties their due as well. I disagree with you. That's just me.
I knew you disagree with me, because you're on the one side.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time.
Sure, okay, yeah, whatever. 902-405-6000. Look, some people are just going to hear what they're going to hear. I guarantee if you listen to that hour that we had with Steve Murphy, and there were lots of opportunity and lots of times in which we talked about and were critical of the Liberals and Mark Carney, and conversely, Jagmeet Singh and Pierre Poilievre, and gave him his due as well. So I don't know. Anyway, people hear what they want to hear. I don't know what else to say. 902-405-6000. Wayne, hello.
Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Oh, I just lit a cigar, and I'm sitting in my chair in the garage.
Nice.
Feeding my two puppies their treats, their morning treats. Here's my take on the politics. You just had a gentleman on there saying there's nobody saying anything for the seniors. I totally agree with him.
Yeah, that's true.
We got seniors that can't afford the rent because the rent has gone through the roof. They can't afford their medication, or they got to choose between eating and their medication. They can't afford the groceries. There definitely needs to be something done with CPP and old age security and the supplement. I just watched, I'm 64 years old, and I just watched the last family member on my mother's side pass away. And growing up, listening to the seniors in the family, they all talk about the same thing. Some of them were lucky to snag good paying jobs and own it their own home and were pretty well off when they passed away. I mean, they could afford to live. But there was others that weren't that lucky, that had to struggle, lived in public housing. And they would tell you that life was tough and they had to struggle to survive. And nobody knocked on my door to tell me that they're going to do something for the seniors or nothing like that. And that irritates the crap right out of me. I haven't got my mind made up where I'm going to put my tick in the box yet. Mm-hmm. This gun control thing. Mm-hmm. I'm on the fence with it, and I'm off the fence with it. I'm on the fence with it, where I agree. Why do you need an automatic weapon? I understand why you need a semi-automatic weapon, depending on the animal you're hunting. Like if you're hunting wild boar, I wouldn't stand in front of a wild boar with a bolt-action rifle. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. It seems to me they're going after the innocent and not the criminal. We got a swinging door in our penitentiary. I mean, you got kids out there that are getting charged 30 or 40 times before they give them 15 or 20-year sentence. There's got to be something done with the law. So I don't know where I'm at. I'm telling you now, I'm quite ticked off that nobody's doing nothing for the seniors, and it's not spoken about enough how rough it is for seniors in this country. Yep. It's ridiculous the way our seniors are being treated.
It's true. It seems to me, Wayne, that you're leaning toward the conservatives. That's kind of based on what am I wrong? Am I reading you wrong there?
No, yeah, you are. I'm leaning more towards the People's Party of Canada.
Okay.
And only because of hearing that lady that you had on there this morning talking. That's the only reason why I'm doing it.
Is that right, eh?
And it started to sway me there. But, I mean, it's pretty sickening when you're in the grocery store and you're watching people watch every dime. And I did all right. I did 30 years in the Navy, so I'm getting a half-decent pension. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, you got people out there, they're struggling, and they're struggling hard. Yeah. And one time I would drive by all these panhandlers. Now I stop and I give them whatever change I got because I know times are tough.
Yeah.
And I grew up with a mom. Hang on a second. I grew up with a mom that raised 10 kids. And times were tough. We shared everything except our socks and our underwear. Everything else we had to share. So they don't need to tell me what it's like being tough.
Yeah.
I lived in public housing. I grew up in public housing. I went to high school. I did Economics 101. And I always said since I joined the Navy, Canada should never have all of its eggs in the one basket. I said it's going to pay down the road for it. And here I am living it. I can see it now. And I totally disagree with the way they sank the military to the ground. Here we are now. We got an idiot south of the border, and they're using their military and their economic might against us like we're trash. But I got news to them. I ain't no trash. I worked hard all my life, and I'll only buy Canadian. And if I can't find it in Canadian, it'll be a cold day in hell, and I'll be lying in my grave, frozen like a rock. I'll never, ever, ever, ever again buy anything American. Never. I'll burn it to the ground first before it comes across my property line.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the end of my rant for today, sir.
Okay, Wayne, thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it. Take care.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, you got it, 902-405-6000. Stephen, hello.
Oh, hello, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm doing great. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I think that's a fantastic journey. I've been on mine since 1985, so enjoy the fun and the fights on that. I'm decided. I'm decided liberal. Reason why is the three-line slogan guy is just not doing it to me. Had Jack Layton been around, I probably would have voted NDP. Mm-hmm. That's just where I'm going. So, Jagmeet Singh, great guy. He just doesn't have the charismatic side that Jack had. I don't trust Polyev. He's, as I say, constant three-line slogans. And I think it was either you or Rick had said the first job of a politician is to get reelected.
Yep.
I think it was you, or was it Rick?
No, it was me.
It was you. Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't recall. I've been listening for so many years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I wanted to say I'm completely 100% decided in that direction. That's where I'm going. Two other things. I think you had Anne on the phone call the other day about the Coalition of Willing, and she said it was like 5 countries. It's not. It's 33 countries. And it was started March 2nd before Carney became PM on March 9th. So a little bit of fact-checking on that one. If Anne's listening, she should probably do a little fact-checking on things. But that's my opinion piece, Todd. I don't know what you have to comment on.
Okay, Stephen, no comments. I'll let it stand on its own. Thanks for the call, pal.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Hello, Chris.
Good afternoon, Todd. How are you doing, bud?
I'm well, you?
Good, thank you. Look, thanks for having Steve on. It's always refreshing and insightful, entertaining, and he's one of my favorite guests that you could have on. He and Ian Lee, I think. Another guest I'm glad you had on was Sean Fraser. And you know I'm not a Liberal supporter by now, I think. But I think Sean must have grown up on a cattle farm because he certainly can shovel the BS. That was unbelievable. I mean, I don't know when people are going to smarten up and see through some of these guys. I mean, you asked him about housing and immigration, for example. And where did he go directly with it? Typical Liberal thing. Blame everyone else. Take no responsibility. And who do you blame this time? Well, it's the university's fault for requesting too many student permits. I mean, come on. Where does he get off with that? I mean, that's lame, in my opinion. There's a lot of people that they're saying we need someone to unify the country, and I don't think a lot of people actually know this, but Pierre Poilievre is picking up endorsements, some of them quite lately, from 2 very unlikely bedfellows, and that is trade unions and business groups. Now, usually business groups and trade unions are on opposite sides of the fence. I think you'll agree with me on that.
Yeah, that's true.
But what was very surprising last week is the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Quebec endorsed Pierre. Also the Windsor, Ontario group and the ones in Saskatchewan and several other unions. The Quebec one really surprised me. So we may see a little bit of a flip-flop in voting in Quebec. I hope we do. And on the weekend, there was a group of business leaders representing, well, energy companies, major banks, investment firms, and so on, that took out full-page advertisements in several newspapers endorsing Pierre. These are guys, the business groups, these are guys that have been in business, are in business, have been successful in business, and know business. And if they felt that Mark Carney was such a great economist and such a great business person, why are they endorsing Pierre?
Well, you answer the question. Why do you think they're endorsing Pierre?
Because they know that Mark Carney is not what he is leading people to believe that he is. They know that Pierre will be the better of the two for the economy. I happen to agree with that, obviously, personally, but these guys who know a lot more about business than I do, if they're supporting him, it's because they want the economy to get ahead, they want the country to succeed, and Pierre, out of the two, Pierre has the best idea for doing that. That's my opinion as to why they're endorsing them. You mentioned yesterday that a lot of people seem to have a problem trusting Pierre, and I hear it too. I hear people all the time saying that, but what is their basis for that? The guy has not been in power as far as being a prime minister yet, and so what promises has he made and broken to them? What lies has he told, and what things did he didn't follow through on? I mean, it's pretty hard to call him untrustworthy when, in my opinion, there's no real basis for it. Do you see a basis in that, or why people are saying that? I can't see it.
Look, sometimes we can analyze all day long as to why people feel the way they do, but the reality is that's how they feel. That is how, and you've admitted it. That's how people feel. I think with Pierre Poilievre, some of the language that he's used, Canada's broken, and some of that real tough language that worked when Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister, I think is not working now, and that's part of it, is that people feel as though that harsh language, that unpatriotic type sounding language, which is no longer in vogue because of what's going on with Donald Trump and the 51st state threat and all of that, that's all at play. Do you agree or disagree, Chris?
No, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
But the issues that Pierre brought up about the country being broken, they're as real now as they were 6 months or a year ago.
I get that, but Chris, you asked why people have challenges trusting him is because that's and also there's a concern out there that the Conservative Party, look, they did the same thing with Stephen Harper. They claimed that Stephen Harper was going to roll back same-sex marriage laws, which he had no intention of ever doing.
No intention of it.
They claimed that he was going to go after abortion rights, which he had zero intention of ever doing and didn't do, by the way. So for whatever reason, that it's working, and yeah, I guess you could call that fear mongering. I think that's an accurate statement.
It absolutely is, and I mean, I usually, and I'm sure you do too, Todd. I try and base my opinions on fact or circumstance or history or something that's verifiable to me, that I can say, okay, this is why I'm making it. I don't make it just based on feelings only. I like to get a feel for people. Obviously, we all do that. But when a person comes out, like in Carney's case, for example, and in my opinion, he's a prolific liar. He lies too easily and too frequently. Everything about when he was in Charlottetown, Pierre's going to get rid of abortion. There is no evidence to that Pierre said during the debate, and I think you quoted him the other day as saying that they have no intention of tampering with that.
Yeah.
But it just seems that Carney and the Liberals, they'll fearmonger and outright lie, even when the truth would serve them better. And I'm just sick and tired of that. Whether Pierre gets in, if he gets in, I hope and pray he does for the country's sake. But if he gets in, is everything he's going to do going to make me happy? Probably not.
No.
But Carney's not going to make all the Liberals happy either. I mean, there's a give and take thing, and one of your callers earlier made mention of the fact the lesser of two evils. Well, if you want to look at it that way, make your decision that way. And in my opinion, the lesser of the two evils definitely is Pierre Poilievre. It's not Mark Carney.
Okay, Chris, appreciate the call.
Todd, thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Another Chris. Hello, Chris.
Good afternoon, Todd. It's good talking to you, son.
Indeed. Thanks for calling.
I take it you're on the radio so that you're feeling well?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Good stuff. That's good to hear. I had an occasion to talk to your contemporary Rob Snow yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
And his topic was the two different messages that are being put out there by the Liberals and the PCs. The Liberals being fear and the PCs being hope. This message of hope for the future, that, you know, every Canadian is going to be able to afford a house if they work hard. You'll have safe streets, safe neighborhoods, hope, while the Liberals would just keep beating that Trump drum right to death, that we need them because they're best going to deal with the big bad man down south.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed to me that it always seems to be that way. Like, you know me, I don't trust any of them anymore. There's no accountability in government. So really, bottom line is I don't trust any of them. But the two messages, like, I think the message of hope speaks more to what we need right now in this country than fear. I don't think there's the basis in that fear for Donald Trump. I said it to Rob, and I'll say it to you. He is a Frankenstein that was created by the United States, and the United States will deal with him. There's already cracks in his armor. There's already widespread protests, so leave him alone. He should never, somebody like that should never dictate who we elect as a leader in this country, because we have our own set of homegrown issues and problems that we need to deal with. And they just keep pounding on that fear. You know, Canada needs us. We can deal with Trump. And meanwhile, at least Poilievre, his message is that we can have that, And the thing was that Rob said, "Is that a pipe dream?" I said, "No, it's not really. It's the Canada that I grew up in.
Right.
I grew up in a Canada where everybody who worked could afford a home. Everybody had a family doctor. You never heard of that. You never heard of thousands of people going without primary health care.
Right. Yeah.
And it just seems to me that they're creating this crisis because, once again, if they try to campaign on their track record, which is it's a matter of fact, it's there, it's history, it's right there, it's not conjecture.
Yeah. Chris, listen,
go on their track record.
I'm out of time. Thanks for the call, though, pal.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, take care. All right, thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and noon. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job, as always. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.